Okay. Get a so we're gonna go over to the power ranking. Okay. Next, make some enemies with this one. Fun. It's all. If you want to prove something wrong, the answer is win. So we are looking at this. This could slide pretty significantly. I hear you, Hedwig, but what do you want me to do? Ball match is taking forever. Like they've been on pause for 10 minutes between maps now. So gonna have to do it. Very quiet. Okay, let's see what I can do there. Not sure how much I'm gonna be able to do about that. Hey, they just unpaused. Fun fact. Doesn't matter. I started. We're going to do. Okay. Can you guys hear me all right? Maybe. Maybe. I hope so. Not much better. Wow. That's really annoying. That's really annoying, in fact. Bad at all. Yeah, that's not going to work. Is because stupid update today that was bad, to be quite honest. Yeah, I do have more. Well, that sucks, but I can try this.
Is is that better or worse? That better or worse than before? 0 out of 10? 0 out of 10? I don't think it's 0 out of 10. Law, you wanna give me an update there? Better audio. Okay, we'll go with it then. 8 out of 10. Fine. So what we are looking at here is the power rankings. The truth is, I don't expect too much resistance from anyone, and we will be checking in on the. Is everything just broken now? I can't draw properly. WTF? Everything is just broken now. Okay, we will close and relaunch Epic then. That is worthless. We can quit Teams. We never want Teams open. What happens when I don't do a YouTube stream for 6 months, I guess? Worse quality, more volume. Yeah, that's what I figured. It's why I was trying not to use this one, because I know the quality on it is worse. Okay, so I don't expect too much resistance on what I've got here ranking wise. The only things that are really interesting that have happened is Winthrop did in fact beat Northwood. We did have a Fisher Navy beat up on Bryant Stratton, which moved Bryant Stratton down from what previously would have been my 4 slot over to my 6 slot. They were running with Pantera rather than Monkey Happy. He's rebranded to something, so they did have a positional downgrade there, but Brian Stratton has been using Pantera for a year now, so it's not like that, prior to this semester, so it's not like that was should be some huge thing, even though I'm sure they would have preferred to have Monkey Happy there. But that's also why Fisher Navy forced themselves onto my rankings, didn't put themselves ahead of Bryant Stratton because that was there. That's the only thing I think that's really going to get a challenge there, other than Cumberland has found themselves rather low here. Other people might have expected Cumberland a bit higher. They have not impressed. This doesn't seem to be their meta. They are dropping too many maps, looking vulnerable against teams that people might think are up here, like UTD and Briarcliff, but this is where I actually start to get controversial. Teams like UTD and Briarcliff are firmly down in the pit. Like, these guys are not, 12th, 13th place teams based on what we've been seeing. I'm sorry. I, liked the boys over at UTD. I also think I'm going to get in some controversy with Georgia Tech here. I like the boys over at Georgia Tech. They've got old UTD player Kashir. They've got old Northeastern player Sklee over there. You guys have had did not play scenarios, roster missing stuff with too many times, and it's not like, it was just one vacation week. You guys have losses that you shouldn't have had over 3 different weeks with people not in there. Be it, no cashier available, be it your flex support's not available. Like, third one happened today to NC State. It's over. It's over. You can't be propped up through we had people missing over, and it's not like week 1, week 2, week 3 were right in a row either. I think week 2 and 3 were right in a row, but you guys are going to get a very similar treatment to what I'm giving Boise and Utah. I do expect other committee members will give Boise and Utah this treatment, though I don't know that for sure. I don't expect Clear to play 90% of the time, so I think this is probably appropriate because, Syracuse beat Boise. That's real because I don't think Clear is going to play most of the time. If you go into a match against Boise, you don't expect you're going to run into Clear, and that means they're a team of about this quality deep in the pit. Utah is getting more showing up out of PDK, but I want to say they 3-2'd like a Kansas or a Kent State or something with PDK in. PDK is definitely not available full time to them. This something's weird. It's a bad meta for them. Their practice has gone sideways. I don't know, but they're not playing well, and I don't expect PDK to be playing more than 50% of the time. So I'm also pretty happy with them here. I don't care. Your win against Fisher. Yo, what's up, Mason? That's not what I see in the results anywhere. But you guys are having tons of no PDKs from what I'm seeing reported. And I saw a PDK played in like a narrow win. I saw, no, you guys didn't have a win. I saw a loss versus Fisher Navy, I thought, when I clicked in on you guys. Here, we'll click in. Let's do it. Utah White, no. We want Utah Utes. That's a loss versus Fisher Esports. Am I going to click in and find a win here? I would love to see you guys back in it. In Nace. Okay, well, this is Nace, so we're about to see it. Oh, okay, cool. When did this match get played? This wasn't played day of. This would have been listed if this was played day of. I would have seen this. That's huge, and I'm happy to move you guys off of that, because if you guys are actually, playing PDK and actually coming up with wins, that's fantastic. We'll move you right now. Okay. I'm not sure I believe that was day of, even though it says it was day of, and you're telling me it was day of because I saw nothing for that results wise, but that's fine. Cool. We'll move you guys back up. If you guys are playing there, cool. I'm perfectly happy to bring you guys back into here. Fantastic. If you're reassuring me that PDK is playing 100% of the time, but I'm going to be very harsh on pulling this out because you guys picked up bad losses, like to Syracuse when he wasn't playing. Fine. So we'll move on there. Regardless, I don't expect too many objections as we continue through here. And, we are looking at this. We do see, okay, this is Utah Utes. This is Utah Utes with a loss to Fisher, which we expected, and then a win against Fisher Navy. Fine. I'm very unforgiving of we've had people at. You just heard me go over this. I'm very unforgiving of that. I just knocked Syracuse, Georgia Tech for that. I knocked Syracuse for that. Like, if it's a one-time thing, or like over, hey, we had one weekend of matches where people weren't available, fine. But the reality is, how teams are ranked, to a greater degree, I think, for me than for the rest of the committee, should have some degree to do with, well, what team do you expect to show up? And if a team has someone missing, 40% of the time, there's a pretty good chance that someone's going to be missing. That's where we are. Okay. Like UTD always has someone out, and I just don't care that UTD always has someone out. That's who UTD are, as another example. That that sucks. That sucks. But Peck is a percentage of your matches, and if you just cleanly sweep Peck, that's fine. But I'm going to work in the world of, any given opponent. If they have you as their next opponent, what should they be predicting, sort of thing. And, you know, you guys are in a situation where, hey, that happens. Now, I've got you up here in the core tier with Bellevue and Fisher Navy. Win over Fisher Navy. Absolutely not going to deny that. I'm not happy with the results that I've looked up for you guys, though. You don't think your availability is bad, Jen? This is Georgia Tech. We've just been unfortunate. Okay. If your availability is not bad, you've just been unfortunate. You've just lost the matches, and you're in the right place, right? Like, I don't know what to tell. Not I don't know what to tell you there. That is what I'm gonna tell you there. But hey, regardless, this is where we are. I don't expect too much issue now that we've solved Utah in this part here. I think where things start to get interesting, because this is all pretty standard stuff. Fine, we can see this. ISU is currently the king. They won, the last semester and the semester before that, etc. Winthrop just beat Northwood. Fine, not a problem. We're pretty happy with these. We're pretty happy with the order of these. Arizona State, even though their core looked very bad in Master Division last stage, we're further away from Master Division. We're to actual results now. I don't actually think we need to spend very much time up here, and they've looked better recently. Cumberland has looked like they're struggling, including the one loss down to Briarcliff, who, yes, is down here, when they didn't have Cape. And I know Cumberland isn't going to have Cape for some of their NACE varsity matches. That's life. That's how it is. Okay. Most days we've been fine. The second loss we could have made either 1 hour after the set time or any day before, but they couldn't reschedule. Just default was bad for us. And that absolutely sucks. I've been in that situation, as you well know, but the scene just isn't all that friendly on reschedules anymore. Absolutely sucks. Nothing you can do about that. But I'm going by the results that I see, and that's what we have here. So we get into this, where I think this actually starts getting interesting for the rankings, is what's going on in the explanations of why. So we go in here, again, these top, what do we have here, 6, 10, 11. Top 11 aren't going to be too surprising to people. Then we get into sort of our first, like, wait, what's this? This is new. And here we have NC State. NC State has a win against Georgia Tech when they didn't have All-Star. Okay, so I think they had to force like Sklee onto Casti, is what I heard. Okay, that's something. It's like you shouldn't necessarily put them ahead of Georgia Tech if Georgia Tech was missing people, but Georgia Tech's been missing people in 3 different instances here, and the rest of their stuff is going to back up being right here. So what we're also going to see from them is they have a win over Southern New Hampshire University, and you might go, okay, well, should should SNU be up here? Maybe. We'll find out. We'll continue through when we'll explain that as we get there. They've also got a win against Alvernia down here, and a win against Winthrop's Academy team, as well as Tamu, Maroon, and Delaware. Those don't matter. Their only losses are to Cumberland and Northwood. Losses to Cumberland and Northwood aren't really going to hurt them. Cumberland's in a tier above them. Northwood, no one is expected to beat. That isn't, in these top 6 teams, really in these top 3 teams. That's going to work out. That's going to make some degree of sense for us. Let me make this a little bit smaller so I can have both up at once. If I go like that, cool. Excellent. Almost excellent. Cool. So that's going to makes some degree of sense. They're here. This is going to be a surprise to some people. People wouldn't really started paying any attention to these guys until last year, last semester. But here they are. They found a win over a Georgia Tech that had a little bit of roster issues. They found a win against SNU, who was fine last year and hasn't messed up this semester. So hey, that's going to seem pretty reasonable. And then they have some wins over Alvernia, Winthrop Academy, some things that would clearly put them at the top of the pit, but actually we're going to have them up and out of the pit based on that Georgia Tech win, based on that SNU win, based on no losses sort of thing here. Why is Cumberland lower core? Why is Cumberland lower core? Because they haven't looked good. Cumberland hasn't looked good. They have a loss to Briarcliff. I know that Cumberland doesn't have Cabe for that because of the division. And they've had maps dropped and just not looking like they can cleanly sweep against teams that previously people thought were like 12, 13, 14 teams, but are actually like 23, 24, 25 teams sort of things. That's why they're in the lower core. That ranking is rage baiting you. Go win something. Go win something. Okay, Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech are in a vulnerable spot here. Like I said, they've had roster issues, yes, and that's sort of excused some of their losses. Their losses, by the way, are to Illinois Wesley when they didn't have a flex support, Oakland when they didn't have cashier, and to NC State right next to them with no all-star there. They did lose to Bellevue, Bryant Stratton, and Northwood as well, but they did look really good in the Bryant Stratton and Bellevue losses. The problem is looking really good in your losses, if you're then finding some losses elsewhere, that's just kind of resting on excuses. Like, oh, well, we were really good in our losses, and we were missing people for this, and the phase of the moon wasn't good for us. Okay, they didn't make that excuse, and I'm not, trying to knock on them for always having an excuse. These things happened. Excuses are reasons. Reasons are perhaps excuses, but like these are reasons, these are real things. But, close losses against better teams aren't going to do it if you don't have the support under you. The support that they do have is a win over UTD, a win over Syracuse. Those are things, those are some of their better wins that they have there. And, when UTD looked like they were a 13, 14, 15 team, that was pretty solid. This is looking a little vulnerable here. Now, based on the play we saw in these matches, I think they'll rebuild, but this is something I'd be worried about of, hey, the support's a little light here. I think the ranking is fair currently. I just think if they're able to constantly get a full roster, they will easily rise. Who, Cumberland? Or who? Hey, Ivory, how you doing? Got it. That was rage bait. Yeah, no. Okay, so Georgia Tech. Yeah, I think Georgia Tech, based on how they played against Bellevue and Bryant Stratton, if they can keep their team together, playing together, I think they'll be fine. I think they will. Before today, before the loss to, or effectively before their loss to NC State, I'd have had them right in here and been pretty happy with it. Ball State we get to next. Ball State is in extreme danger of falling down to here unless that match is resolved. They went down 2-1 in a series and managed to hold on by drawing out a King's Row there against IWU. They have in previous years traded with IWU, so these have been teams close to each other, but Ball has usually had higher highs than IWU. Wins over Siena Heights, more top 20 finishes, things like that. And because they haven't lost it yet, they haven't done anything wrong. This is kind of where they are. They could drop, much like SNU could drop, because currently they're 6-0 in ABC, and hey, that's good for them. I think their best win is over Northeastern, which isn't worth very much this semester, but, they seem to be playing to the old standard unless they pick up this loss to IWU, which would leave them, if previously they were a top 18, top 22 team and we lost about 6 teams of value, them holding in here, if they've held their 6-0 record, haven't lost any matches, would be a perfectly reasonable thing to do. You're under Utah? Yeah, deal with it. No, this isn't you guys. These are my rankings, and these rankings are better defended than Okra's rankings, better defended than anyone's rankings. I can actually tell you the wins and losses and the why. Like, these, I actually don't think these rankings are all that interesting, to be perfectly honest, because this is roughly what people expect. I think the interesting place for rankings right now is down here, which I've dove deep into because we had to actually figure out what teams behind Cumberland looked like. Oh, it's virtual. Yeah, I don't care. Whatever. Um, you guys haven't looked good. Sorry, you haven't. You haven't lost anything you're not supposed to, so you're still in the core, which is fantastic. You have held on while teams like UTD and Briarcliff, who people thought were up here-ish, well, perhaps thinking you were up here-ish, these teams collapsed based on their results. Georgia Tech has fallen based on their results here. You guys have, I've nudged you behind ASU. I've moved you down a tier, but this is a real tier break. This is a real tier break. These are really smaller tier breaks that we're looking at. It's just what it is. It's just usually these are sort of the more interesting thing where the marquee matches are happening, and that's why these are all named core, whereas everything else, because these are the core collegiate matches, whereas, these are the three fighting for the championship. These are the people who can't break into the core but do a pretty good job of defending themselves against this. And the pit is teams that are full of serious flaws, have defensive weaknesses, have all sorts of circle of suck, lose to each other, really hard to figure out which team is actually better sort of stuff. Converse hasn't won anything. Sorry, reality. And those were some of the things. Like the early rankings would have expected from the committee, would have expected Converse to be better, would have expected UTD to be better, would have expected Briarcliff to be better, would have expected Ohio State to be worse, would have expected TAMU to be better, would have expected CSULB to be better. And because these things weren't true, teams got propped up. A beating a CSULB, a beating a TAMU was expected to be worth something, and now it's been proven that the value of those wins has collapsed because those teams aren't it this semester, at least so far. Okay, so that's what we're looking at here. Then we move on to Oakland. Oakland's a team who, has been like top 32, top 40 before. They have Croy, but they've had Croy for more than a year at this point. We would have expected, hey, their moves that were going to happen happened. But they've actually done fantastic this season, and they slot into place for real in our top 20. So we look at them. Their best win is over Georgia Tech when Georgia Tech didn't have Cashier. Their next best win is over Toronto, who you guys are going, Toronto hasn't been relevant for a year and a half. Why do we care about Toronto? And then Grandview, who's right over here, who has a win over Briarcliff. They've also got wins over Oregon, University of Michigan. We don't care. Their worst losses as Oakland are to St. Clair and Cumberland. I don't mind that. Losses to St. Clair and Cumberland, those are going to be pretty good losses for anyone that's not in the core. We're happy with that. Fantastic. They can be a rear guard. They are beating on the pit, stomping on the pit, and not having any resistance. And, they're not able to go higher, but they are not having weaknesses exposed. They are not in the circle of suck. Wait, you won against this person, but you lost against this person who won against this person who lost against this person. They're just cleanly here. Okay. Then we move on to SNU. SNU, again, there's not going to be much that's on SNU. Their best win is over Warner, who is down here. I think people probably thought Warner and Winthrop Academy were better, like they expected. C-Slub, TAMU, Converse, etc. Briarcliff, UTD, etc., to be better. These two have not proven that, and this, I'm sure, will be controversial. People probably expected these guys were like 18 to 25 range, and that really hasn't held true. Yeah, I suppose I can start to unwind this now. No, I'm going to come back and unwind this a little bit later. So, SNU, not looking at any serious wins. The platform that they're sitting on could very easily collapse, like we seem to be watching Ball's platform in real time collapse. But SNU hasn't lost matches that they shouldn't lose yet. They're, again, their losses are to NC State, who we've established does look like the leader of the rear guard, threatening their way into the core, as well as Bellevue, Fisher Navy, Bryant Stratton. Those are going to work okay. So that's going to be our rear guards. And now we move into the pit where you're going to see some teams that I think people are not ready for, have not expected. By the way, do give me an update. Oakland just hasn't played anything other that good yet. Okay, except they just beat, they beat Georgia Tech. Oh, Georgia Tech was down Kashir. Okay, they beat Toronto. Toronto's not any good. Yeah, you want to make that argument. I know you want to make that argument. Toronto is better than the teams behind them. So you can think that, but you would be wrong. IWU did win. Okay, then balls placement collapses. That's just what it is. These guys have traded. IWU also has a circle of stuff going on with CSULB and Arcadia. IWU has beaten CSULB. CSULB has beaten Arcadia. Arcadia has beaten IWU. IWU and Ball have traded. That's what's going on here, and we'll talk about why they're here in the rankings as opposed to further up or further down as we get there. But this brings us over to Texas A&M San Antonio, or TAMU USA, however we want to, TAM USA, whatever we want to do there, was on no one's radar before now. So you're all going, what the heck, Temporal? Why do you think this school is better than like a Grandview or an IWU? Temporal, your rankings just suck. No, because they have a win over, are you ready for this? Minnesota State Mankato. Temporal, you've lost it. Minnesota State Mankato has never mattered to anyone ever. This is not something to hold a team up with. Fraud rankings, these rankings are frauds. They're not them. This is us diving into the pit and actually solving it and actually getting the answer. So their other wins as we look at it for TAM USA is Grandview, which is going to matter. Grandview does have their win over Briarcliff here, and Michigan, UW Stout, we don't care about that. But then we move on to University of Toronto, who's right behind them. Okay, that's going to work just fine with us. They've got their best win over Mankato. Their worst loss is to Oakland. Okay, so a lot is resting on Mankato and the strength and value of Mankato. So is Mankato any good? Is Mankato any good? Is what this all comes down to. And the answer is yes. They beat SCAD. They beat Alvernia. They also, what do we have here? Yeah, so they beat SCAD, they beat Alvernia, they beat Oregon and some other support, but we're not actually going to rank Oregon here. Beating SCAD matters because SCAD beat UTD, beat Grandview, beat Briarcliff. You see how this is going? SCAD being here is real, and Mankato is better than them. And it's not a fluke because they also beat Alvernia. So we have some newcomers. We have some newcomers that actually matter that are currently trending towards the top of the pit. Toronto isn't a newcomer. They've been here before. They've been in the scene for ages. They've been good. They've been bad. Doesn't matter. But San Antonio, Texas San Antonio, and Minnesota Mankato, these are new players that, we're halfway into the season, 60% into the season, 6 out of 10 matches of Swiss into homecoming, the biggest main thing. And these guys have the wins that matter. So they could absolutely collapse. This is the pit. They probably have defenses that are weak. If you told me tomorrow that UCLA beat Mankato, I'd go, that's fine. If you told me that Syracuse beats San Antonio, okay, fine. We're back to the pit. It all scrambles again. But based on the results we have, we can actually solve real power rankings here. So then we will move on to SCAD. Their best win is against UTD, no problem. They've also got a win against Cumberland Academy there, win against Kent State, we don't care. They have the loss to Mankato, like we talked about there. So that's going to work. They also have a loss to ISU. We don't care. So SCAD's looking fine. SCAD did not collapse and look like some team. SCAD is not some fraudster. Their losses are to, like we said, Mankato and ISU. And Mankato's actually good. So, okay, cool. And SCAD beat UTD. That's what it is. I think we might be a bit high, but like division. Hey, Splice, you can think that, but you're not losing to anyone. You just got to win over Georgia Tech. Maybe they're missing someone, etc. But Georgia Tech was sort of like the last bastion of teams that weren't like firmly top teams. Georgia Tech was like the last bastion of that. Like Georgia Tech can hang sort of thing. And I think Georgia Tech can hang like we thought that, maybe Texas or Briarcliff could hang. Georgia Tech, I think, can actually do it. But, Georgia Tech's had too many roster issues, and you guys got the win over them. Everyone's getting all the interaction he could ask for. Oh no, I watched like 5 of you close out the stream when I started going on about San Antonio and Mankato, which is fine with me because these are why I do the best rankings, because you have to get into the pit and actually solve this nonsense, and I love it. Okay, so we've got SCAD beating UTD. Then we'll move on to UTD. UTD, absolutely fantastic. What we have here in terms of results, we can see their best win. And UTD has had tons of like, oh, so-and-so player was missing, so-and-so player was missing. But when like 2 out of 3 of your matches have a match report result with, oh, so-and-so wasn't available or didn't play, congrats, that is your team. Your team is a mishmash of, hey, sometimes people don't play. When the Giants play against the Dodgers in the regular season of the MLB, we don't go, oh, well, it was a rest day for our shortstop, so we're gonna write a little heavy asterisk next to this on a regular season game. No, that's just the result. Now, admittedly, they'll trade matches much more in Major League Baseball, NBA, whatever, than you will in this. In Overwatch, once you get to some of these tier breaks, you almost don't lose to teams in lower tiers. But, if your team has a rotating roster of people, your team has a rotating roster of people. So, UTD, best win is against Grandview. I will show you guys Grandview. Grandview is right next to them. Nothing crazy there. They've also got a win against Tamu, but Tamu isn't really worth very much right now. Neither is Converse. Those are not meaningful wins propping them up right now. Tamu and Converse's losses are bad. People thought Tamu was going to be good. They were good last semester. They were doing well. They went like 7-1 in the beginning of the expert season, registered as a full collegiate team at expert. They did not finish the season like that. They finished the season like 11th, 12th, 13th, something like that. But their actual collegiate matches since then have not been good. They have not handled the meta shift once the meta went towards Zarya well at all, from what I've heard and from the results that I've seen there. Converse didn't really handle well the sort of rebuild and then losing their program, whatever. So UTD doesn't actually have any good wins. UTD has one good win, and it's Grandview, and it's holding them here. And Grandview, is not the good win that we thought UTD had or was capable of 3-4 weeks ago, sort of thing. At least that the committee thought they were. I was a little lower on UTD than I think most of the rest of the committee. I still had them in my top 20. Now they're outside of it. As we move on to Grandview, they've got their win over Briarcliff. They've got a win over CSULB, no problem. Those are going to work just fine with us. They've got losses to UTD. They've got the loss to San Antonio, like we mentioned over here, totally fine with us. They've got the loss to Oakland. They've got a loss to ASU. None of those are really bothering us. Those look like, hey, we've got Grandview in about the right place here. Briarcliff lost to Grandview. That's why they're here. They also lost to Warner. So now we have something interesting. Briarcliff lost to this, but also lost to Warner. So why is Warner so low? Temporal, you're just crazy. I'm telling you, everyone thinks that Winthrop Academy and Warner are like a top 22 team. Briarcliff taking a loss to them, especially when they have their win against Cumberland without Cabe, is like, you're crazy. These are just better teams. Temporal, I'm done with you. This is stupid. It's good that Okra is taken over as the main place for Collegiate, because Temporal, you are not sharing whatever supply you're high on. I would love to agree with you. But I'm going to skip all the way down now to Warner and Winthrop Academy, because these matter. So we're going to look at Warner. Best win against Briarcliff. We mentioned that. Traded with Winthrop Academy. Warner has the more recent loss to Winthrop Academy. Okay, so far this just sounds like both of these guys should be higher, right? Nothing too crazy there. They've got the loss to Syracuse. Okay. They've got the loss to Arcadia. they've got the loss to Snoo, and they've got a loss to Cumberland, which we don't care about. Well, okay, so Arcadia, Alvernia, Syracuse seems like they should be back down here if these teams have wins against them. So, that's not crazy. You can go, okay, well maybe they should be ahead of these teams. I don't care. They can be ahead of these teams. That doesn't mean anything to me. Boise is sitting here because Syracuse beat them and we have no idea what to do with Boise. This truly is Boise can be here. Boise can be down here. Northeastern can be down here. They can be here. I don't know. That is, hey, whatever, I don't really care sort of thing. But these teams are legitimately ahead of them. So if these teams are legitimately ahead of them, what are we going to do? Well, maybe we should look at their sort of parallel teams since these have traded. We looked at Warner here, but maybe if we look at Winthrop Academy, that'll give us a better idea of where these two teams should be. Okay, so we'll look at Winthrop Academy to get our better idea. Well, they have that one win against Mankato. And that is really interesting because maybe Mankato isn't a good team, and maybe that causes all of this stuff to collapse, and maybe we're back to the rankings that we think we have. Maybe that would be the niche in the armor that could do it because, Temporal, like, they're actually good, and that's what's going on. So we'll look at Winthrop Academy's other wins. Well, they've got the win over Warner, and they've got a win over Cincinnati. Okay, that's not doing too much for us. What about their losses? Well, they've got the loss to Warner. They've got the loss to Arcadia, which is, again, going to put them right over here. Okay, well, we're lost again. Well, maybe Arcadia is actually the king, but Arcadia is not the king, and we know Arcadia isn't the king, and we will get of the pit here, and we'll get into why Arcadia isn't the king of the pit right after we get past Ohio State, because once we get past Ohio State, we get to this collection of 4, and this collection of 4 is important. So bear with me as we pivot back up to where we were on Ohio State here. And we can see that in Ohio State, we have the win over Syracuse, the win over Utah when they didn't have PDK. I'm just gonna grin and bear it with the Utah no PDK thing there. That is not the only no PDK thing for Utah, but hey, we'll deal with it. So we've got, I was looking at Ohio here. Give me just a second. So yes, we're looking at Ohio, which has just escaped my levels. And then Ohio has a win over Syracuse, the win over Utah that we talked about. They've got the loss to Briarcliff, so behind Briarcliff makes sense, and the loss to St. Clair. This doesn't seem too bad. Could we move Ohio down to over here instead? Yeah, we could. Ohio could be anywhere between here and here. That's flexible. We don't have proof on that. St. Clair's giving us good feedback that, Ohio hit them really hard and they were surprised, got a map off them, etc. So I'm inclined to go here, but could you place them anywhere from here to here? Sure. But that's not actually a very big swing because these 4 teams are effectively tied with each other. Illinois Wesley just went back and forth with Ball. Ball won the upper finals, and then Illinois Wesley won grand finals at their Corn Belt Clash that just happened. Okay, so this is where Ball belongs. Ball's next best win is over Northeastern, and Northeastern could be here, Northeastern could be down here. Not a very meaningful second win that they have there. Okay, but right, Osu also took a map off St. Clair. Right. St. Clair is giving us feedback that, whoa, that team can fight, sort of thing. But they lost to Briarcliff. Oh, but Briarcliff's good. No, Briarcliff lost to Grandview. Oh, but Grandview's good. No, Grandview lost to UTD. Oh, but UTD's good. No, UTD lost to SCAD. Oh, but SCAD's good. Actually, I agree. SCAD is good. But SCAD did lose to these teams that are better, as best we can tell. Now, can this all just fall apart and be like, no, it actually turns out the teams we think are good, but they have some weakness to some type of strat that this team can run, that this team can run? Yes, but these teams, at least San Antonio, hasn't been exposed. They haven't been conquered by other teams in the pit on that strategy. So they get to be king of the pit. Okay. So So we go there. This is why we have Ohio State leaning on the higher side. You know, they could be 5 spots back, or they could be here. I guess 4 spots back or here. But then we were talking about these 4 teams: Illinois Wesley, Ball, CSULB, and Arcadia. So as we look at Illinois Wesley, their best win is against Georgia Tech with no Regimores. They have the win over Ball, which is, you know, the good thing, etc. And they have a win over CSULB, who we have 2 spots from them because we just inserted Ball in here. Okay, but then they've got losses to Arcadia, who is right here. They've got losses to Briarcliff. Yep, so they go along the Briarcliff thing. That puts this whole chunk behind Briarcliff. They've got the loss to Fisher, St. Clair, the loss to Ball. That doesn't matter. They're right next to Ball. So this is where they should be. They should be to the right of Briarcliff, but they have to be chunked in here with CSULB and Arcadia unless some other craziness happens. Second team in the pit is Toronto. And we're probably not going to see Toronto pop up on anyone's radar next week because they did something interesting, unfortunate, where they got their win against Mankato and their loss to Oakland, but they also have a forfeit loss. Nothing you can do about that. I'm not going to treat a forfeit loss as a real loss, but it means they're probably not going to get tough resistance this coming week. But we'll see. I'm sure most of the pit is a lack of data problem, but surely some amount of it is inconsistency in any given data. That's exactly what the pit is. That is exactly what the pit is, Ethan. The pit is made up of, hey, these teams aren't consistent enough. They're lacking the consistency to do things. And that sometimes can be, hey, we didn't get a good night's sleep. Hey, one of our players is stressed because they've got a final tomorrow. But that also comes in the form of, hey, this team doesn't know what to do and just loses if you have a really good hit scan. This team has a tank who is amazing 70% of the time and ints his brain out 30% of the time. This team runs sim strats that have all sorts of problems to this Brawl team, but no problems whatsoever to this Venture Doomfist team, sort of thing. And this Venture Doomfist team can't beat the Brawl team that the sim team causes a lot of problems for. That's absolutely what goes on in the pit, and that's why it is the pit. That's why it is, oh my goodness, how do we find our way through this? But the point is, if you're in this pit, you deserve to be in this pit because you are not able to stand above it. We have some schools like NC State managing to stand above it. NC State is going, we're fine. The core teams are just immune to the pit because they just beat you. Their macro is good enough, their mechanics are good enough. Even if you have your silly Doomfist strats, they go, we're just better than you. It doesn't matter. Oh yeah, your Doomfist did a thing and that surprised us and you got a fight and we still clutched up and you got a pick and we still clutched up and 4v5'd you because we were in the correct positions. We had the appropriate ult economy. We didn't freak out and dump 4 ults when your Doomfist got a pick or when you Sim TP'd your Freya onto a crazy angle and got a pick on our Baptiste or whatever. Do most committee members just look at results? What do you do different? Like look at VODs? No. So committee members are looking at results, absolutely. Well, committee members are doing a few things. So committee members, I don't control how the committee members vote. I'm on the committee, but it's not my committee. I've been doing this longer than the committee has existed. And what you look at here is committee members ultimately can vote on whatever criteria they feel like voting on, but we will, if we can figure out who did it, we will shame them sometimes in the committee chat. The committee chats talked to each other a little less in the last year or two than I like. There used to be more sharing of people's rankings and sort of shaming each other and arguing, and that's kind of gone away in the last 2 years. I'm not a huge fan of it, but we do have some ranking directors who I believe can see people's rankings now, and if something is just wildly, absolutely crazy off, like if I went and put Converse as the #1 team, which I'm not going to do, I expect that Twin Salty, who I believe can see the rankings, would DM me and be like, hey man, what are you doing? You can't do that sort of thing. On the other hand, I am absolutely not going to get any sort of pushback for putting Oakland here. Like people in the other members of the committee might go, hey, Oakland there is wrong. Or other members of the committee might go, what? You're not ranking UTD or Briarcliff and you're 20 there? How could you? But A, I can defend it, and B, no, those are not egregious enough to get any sort of pushback, and I can't swear that the ranking directors can see it. I actually don't know how many times, or even if ever, the ranking directors have actually pushed back on anyone's rankings. But that's a new thing, the ranking directors, to this last year. Okay. Really think Utah's a big question mark. I'm with you, Lucas. I was fighting with Utah at the beginning of this stream because I had them down there with Boise, but then they were right. They do have the win over Fisher Navy. I can't do it. But Utah's a big question mark for me. Something's wrong there, we could say. Okay. Um. Okay. Cool. Yeah, right. They had such a narrow win with PDK versus Kansas, and I think I'm told that we were wrong. What was it that No Sam was telling us? PDK wasn't in Kent State. Oh, so it wasn't Kansas. So I said Kansas or Kent, and he defended the Kent. Or maybe they played Kent, and you were wrong down here below. I don't remember. I just remember seeing that and going, if it's that close with PDK in, something is broken, and I don't think I want to rank you guys. But hey, if you got the win and you got the Fisher Navy win, I'm going to put them there. I'm going to eat crow on that one and live with it. So we went through IWU, Ball State. Ball State, the only new data is the loss to IWU. They have a win over IWU. They have a win over Northeastern. They're 6-0 in ABC. Fine. CSU LB, we can move on to. They've got their win over Arcadia, so they're in this circle here. They've got a win and loss to Cumberland B, who I haven't put on here. They've got a win to Bronco Black, no one cares. They've got the loss to IWU, as we said there. They've got the loss to Grandview. Okay, this is shaping up. This is where this chunk belongs. They've got losses to Fisher and Cumberland, whatever, we don't care. Arcadia, last one in this cluster of 4. We can say they've got their win against IWU, so that completes sort of the 3-person circle that now has Ball in it as well. They've got a win against Winthrop Academy, so Winthrop Academy cannot be, oh, they're actually up here, sort of thing. No, they can't. They've got their loss to Arcadia there, and we can't move Arcadia up. We can't move this chunk up because of losses to Ohio, Briarcliff, Grandview, things like that. So no, this is the right order. This is the right order. This is what the data says, guys. These are the answers. Now, could you tell me that someone's stomach is upset and tomorrow Syracuse is going to beat SNU? Absolutely. Absolutely. But this is what we've got right here. So this is what we're doing. This is the only fair rankings, we'll say. Okay, then we move on to Alvernia. First one out of that. They've got wins over Syracuse. Okay, they're going to be ahead of Syracuse there. Win over Kent State. They've got a loss to Maryland. They've got a loss to Mankato. They've got a loss to NC State and to Cumberland. Okay, those are fine. The weird one there is the loss to Maryland. Maryland went in, won a LAN, I believe. And Maryland actually did some very interesting things there where was it that they do? Yeah, they beat Alvernia twice. But Alvernia beat Syracuse. Was Maryland just secretly the best? No, because if we want to pull up, I'll do this now. If we want to pull up this, you're going to see. Okay, so we've got 2 Maryland options. We've got Overwatch Academy, so that's going to be a second team. And we've got Maryland College Park. Terps don't swap. No problem. No problem. Okay, but these could be good losses to WGA Overwatch. Well, okay, to Stony Brook Development. Is that a second team for Stony Brook? Well, we've got a loss to Water Warriors. If that's Waterloo, maybe it's not terrible. We've got a loss to OSU JV. So, okay. Clearly they gave up. Maybe they got 2 losses from from people not rescheduling with them or something. I don't know or care. But the reality is I have them at the bottom because I guess you can expect to beat them now because they're phoned out whatever. But they do have the win against Alvernia there. So, hey, that's what we're doing for this one. Then as we're going to continue through here, they've got the, Maryland, Maryland. They're going to have their loss to Warner here, but again, Maryland has lost to a bunch of crazy teams. What are you supposed to do with that? But maybe if they have to loss to Warner, Warner should be ahead of Alvernia, but they can't because Warner, versus Syracuse, and Alvernia beat Syracuse. You see the problems that we run into here. And then we're going to go through. That's kind of as where we finish this. I don't care too much about what we have for the rest because the rest of this is sort of, we've talked about, I think, the ones that people would have been upset about. Boise, no one cares because they're not playing clear and they don't do well enough when they're not playing clear. They don't do well enough when they don't seriously scrim. They'll probably scrim going into some LAN at the end of the semester or end of the year and roll people and force their way back up here. But that's not what they are right now. That's not what I would expect going into a match with them next week, the following week, etc. sort of thing. UCLA Slugs, they haven't done anything. Texas A&M lost to the Slugs. Slugs lost, never mind. Don't seem to be doing much. Cumberland is beating no one, and we explained why the Terps are down here. So that's what we have for the rankings. I'm going to catch up on chat now, so if anyone wants to flame me harder for these rankings, by all means, or say, no, Temporal, you missed our win over Fisher Navy or whatever, this is the time to get that in. Go yell at me, tell me that stuff, and I'll get there. Is the pit? No, the pit is a gradient into obscurity. Absolutely, the pit is a gradient into obscurity because I can't possibly. There's no point in continuing to track them because you get things like Maryland, where like I don't have any interest in continuing to track Maryland because if they're going to do this, who cares? Who cares if they're doing this, we're done, sort of thing. Um, and some of these teams that you can see things for, they've been good. They've been top 32 level before. We've got Gaming Gators, Illinois Orange used to have Chopper and Zoolander. Harrisburg used to be one of the two marquee programs. Them and Maryville. Maryville's also gone. Miami, Ohio was one of the first two programs with Harrisburg to have an OWL player. It was Elk at Harrisburg and Fozex at Maryville. Mizzou used to have a contenders player and then some pretty solid coaching around that. Like the Ultraviolets have been up and down. Like Penn State, if we go back 5 years ago, was a top 13 collegiate school. Rutgers got upsets against top 3 teams 3 times if we go back 3 years or something like that when they had Tap and Neutral working together, with some okay pieces around them. Siena Heights was a flash in the pan last year. Maybe they're playing something this year, but it's not something that we need to pay attention to. Irvine just shut down their program. Riverside used to have, I think Romani went from Riverside to Irvine. I could be misremembering what player it was, but that caused Riverside to go, hey, we're just going to go crazy and do silly hog things and, roll our way into top 32 sort of stuff. The Pizza Pirates have, made dive work for them before. North Texas has had times, if we go back 5 years, where they could be a top 20 program. You get it. You get it. Riverside, I think, had Scissors, but I don't think Scissors has ever played for them. Maybe it was Scissors that was doing Silly Hog stuff for them. I don't remember. I don't think so, though. I think when I remember going to Riverside like 4 years ago, wanting prep for a different Hog team who was Bellevue at the time, because Bellevue's also been a Hog team in the past. And I went to Riverside to get prep because I knew we had Bellevue that week. They said, no, our Hog player transferred. But I could be wrong. It could be that Scissors was just playing Hog for them in the year I'm thinking of. Okay. Scissors isn't playing for them now. I know that much. Okay, so let me catch up on chat. Where's Buffalo? Not being relevant enough. I may have them down in here, but they haven't done anything that I'm considering relevant enough recently. Sorry. Okay, so let's scroll. Oakland having to wait until playoffs are homecoming in order to try and get a higher spot. Well, that's how it works. I mean, that's regularly how it works. I remember one year we had UW absolutely throwing a fit that they were 9-1 and they weren't breaking into like the top 20, and it was because the only meaningful match that they had in Swiss was against SCAD, who was like 18 at the time, and they lost it. And they're like, "What? No, we're 9-1. We are ahead of so many teams. We're ahead of a bunch of teams that are ranked, that are ranked, etc." And it's like, okay, yeah, but You had your chance at a real top 20 team, and they beat you, and you just got lucky in Swiss to go 9-1. Cool. Now UW's been good other times. UW had a year where they had a year where they were doing fun stuff. I think ASU took them out in lower brackets, but they were doing fun Lifeweaver, Cassidy, Winston, Anna stuff. And those four heroes, they made some pretty good synergy work between and could threaten some things. They've been worse since then, but these are things that happen. Okay, let's scroll back here and get more people yelling at me. Also took a map off to St. Clair. Yep. Oakland hasn't played anyone that good yet. You are wrong, though. They have. They have played people that good. You just don't think the people they've played are that good because they have their wins against Toronto and Grandview, and they have a win against a Georgia Tech missing cashier. Now, that's not nothing because it turns out Grandview and Toronto aren't bad. Oh, but Toronto's nothing. I'm telling you, Toronto is bad, Temporal. You can't hold this Toronto as worth anything. But Toronto beat Mankato. But Mankato isn't good. But that's where you're wrong because, again, we see Mankato beat SCAD, and SCAD beat UTD, and UTD beat Grandview, and Grandview beat Briarcliff, and Briarcliff beat Ohio State. So what does that mean? It means I can draw a clean freaking line like this, and that's true. Sorry. Them the results. Them the results. Okay. IW did win. Good. Guys, what happened to Converse? Yeah, it's unfortunate. I will say, getting more excuses ready. We might be shorthanded at Cincy. No! I'm sorry, Jen. That's awful. Government shutdown? That absolutely sucks. I'm sorry to hear that. I want to see you guys. I want to see you guys go full force. I want you guys to be in. I want you guys to be in here and here. I really would love to see that happen because you're doing that without real university support. I know ASU doesn't have university support either, but like these are OWCS teams. We know that, right? These are teams with meaningful recruitment ability, scholarships, whatever sort of thing. And I'm not going to say that there aren't scholarships in play here. Obviously, there are. There's, two Fishers, for example, and like Bellevue obviously hands out some scholarship money. But like having like this is true. So like, and obviously Cumberland is doing the esport thing. They're, going heavy for that. So having Georgia Tech, which isn't really that seriously invested as a program, like you guys care. You guys have been at this for 4 or 5 years now. Having you guys go, no, we can hang the way that ASU is hung, the way that Rutgers is hung in the past, and not doing it off of, hey, we got top and neutral, just happened to be at our school, but off of you guys have sort of built and stayed and said, hey, we can do it. I love that for you. And, I hate to see that, oh, well, we may have more availability issues because, with this many availability issues, they just have to be counted against you. Ivory, Bellevue, right. Ranking is fair currently. I just think they're able to consistently above full roster. They will easily rise. Sure. We'll see. I mean, yeah, I think Cumberland, for example, if they constantly had Cabe, would put themselves pretty firmly back in the core, I hope. But on the other hand, it just hasn't looked good. It just hasn't looked good in terms of the maps dropped, things like that. Again, like they're things like that just haven't been fantastic. And like wins over UTD don't mean anything to me right now. GT a big argument for lower core. I like GT. I like GT, Ivory. I like GT a lot. You might be partially saying that because you had the close match against them, and I would love to put them higher, but I'm actually pretty impartial on these rankings, where I thought they looked great versus Bellevue. I thought they looked great versus Bryant Stratton. But if we look at their actual wins, there's an argument that I have them too high. Their wins over Syracuse and UTD, big whoop. Those aren't worth much. And okay, but they were good last year, so like they can maintain their spot if they don't have bad losses. But like their way of avoiding bad losses has been excuses. Like, oh, did not play, did not play, did not play. Sorry. Okay, and I'll pull up Utah again. What is bottom tier? Bottom tier, Manoa, is the pit because it's chaos, it's craziness. I've actually ordered it quite well, and you have to because you can't get into 20 teams without going into the pit. Meaningfully into the pit at this point because there's only like 11 teams that are actually on it and good, making up core Overwatch right now. Well, core plus champion. Um, so like this matters because we have to go deep into the pit because this gets us what 11, that gets us 15, so we have to go 5 spots into the pit sort of thing. Like, oh boy, okay, fine. I guess UTD barely hangs on to a spot there, which is fine. um yeah, this is rage bait. What part about it, Manoa? I know you were playing during the tape, but I promise this isn't rage bait. The schools that people thought were good, um, the schools that people thought were good, these two, this, this, this. People thought these schools were better coming into this semester, so people got early wins against these schools, things like that, and people went, oh yeah, that's it. Yep, this reaffirms our biases. But now we have enough data to dispel that. Again, this is a clean sweep through of this one beat this one, which beat this one, which beat this one, which beat this one. Okay, then that's right. Oh, excuse me, this one beat this one, which beat this one, which beat this one. But that's right, and you can go, okay, but these two are wrong. Well, you're gonna have to rewind the tape on that because not true. Why is BCU low? What do you mean? They lost to Grandview, who lost to UTD, who lost to SCAD. What do you mean? Why is Briarcliff University low? What? They're not low. This is where they belong. Now you're rage baiting me. Mano just got back to the beginning of the stream. Then don't watch further, and you'll be more happy, Goat. True. At the beginning of the stream, I had you guys up over here, I think, and I brought you down. Sorry. I knew there was danger of that happening. It looked likely, unfortunately. You guys did a great job of bringing back that King's Row, but yeah. Okay, do I have DMs? People blowing me up? Oh no, that's just one DM. That's fine. Okay. So no, BCU is not low splice, and you were here the whole time, so that's fine. Okay, so let's catch up here. They have roast chicken or something? Committee members, I explained that. You clearly put a lot of time into this, and that's good. Thank you, Splice. Thank you. I mean, I started doing this before the committee existed, and the truth is it got a lot easier after the committee existed for 2 reasons. The scene expanded a bit. The scene used to, when I first started, only go about 13 teams deep in terms of making up the core. And then it was clear that we were approaching the end of Owl, so the collegiate scene got bigger as people left Owl to go into collegiate, as people cashed out of contenders to go more into collegiate. Not that there hasn't been contenders players in collegiate for ages, but more so because, hey, there was no Owl future, there was no sustainable future, use your skills and sort of get out sort of thing. So the scene expanded and we got to like 18 to 20 to 22, 5, whatever, teams that were like good and could pretty reasonably defend themselves against the lower tiers. But that was not always what the scene was like. So it got easier when there were more above the fray teams, and there just aren't more above the fray teams anymore. And it got easier because Twin Salty does a lot of tracking. My spreadsheets look different than Twin Salty's spreadsheets. My spreadsheets, here, I'll show you guys what my amazing spreadsheets look like. And by spreadsheets, I mean Notepad. I can go like that because I actually find tracking best win, worst loss does the most for it, and that's not how some of the other stuff looks. Other stuff looks more like, I don't think I can show you guys that sheet because that might be editable if I show you guys that sheet. So we're not going to show you that, but Twin Salty does things where there's a reporting channel that gets reported that anyone in the committee can report on, and he's one of the better ones about it. But B, he put some screenshots, some spreadsheets together where he'll track like what he thinks are the top 25 teams and put every match, the score, etc., sort of thing. So it's fantastic. That's made my job easier. And Twin Salty has sort of taken over as the guy who puts the most into this for sure. No stolen valor there. Twin Salty is putting more into this in some ways more into this these days than I am. But this is old school temporal had you how you had to do the rankings. And back in the day, things like NECC's website absolutely sucked. You'd go pull up an Excel spreadsheet that would show you like these are all the matches that are happened. They didn't get reported anywhere on Discord, or at least not in any channels that were public to people that weren't like specifically in that league. And like here's a week 2 match that actually happened in week 7, and the result isn't notified anywhere. And so that was just a freaking disaster to dig through that stuff back in the day. ABC's always been pretty easy to track. You've pretty much always been able to open up things like this and see, okay, what's happened at least in this league. And then NACE, which now is ABC, but previously was one of the bigger leagues, was reasonably easy to track, but didn't have meaningful matches between top 20, top 25 teams until their playoffs at the end of the season. You were tapped out. You're bad. No, no, no. Correct. Correct. You are correct. Briarcliff has a win over Cumberland with no cave. And so Temporal is completely wrong, and Briarcliff should be much higher, except that Briarcliff, also has that unfortunate fact of, wait a second, they've got a loss to Warner. But Warner surely like a top 22 team. Surely it's like a bad look for Briarcliff to add that loss, but surely Warner isn't all the way down here. Yeah, I've done this bit before, as you can tell. Warner has traded with Winthrop Academy, but they also lost to Syracuse. Well, Syracuse can't be down here. Syracuse must be. No, they lost to Alvernia. But maybe Alvernia. No, Alvernia lost to CSULB. Well, maybe CSULB is. They're not. They're not. They're not. This is the right order. I'm sorry, guys. It is. Uh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So it's hilarious. It's great. These are the rankings. I'll do one more scroll through here. I can do that diatribe for as much as you want, but I'd just be doing the stream again. Let me pull up Utah one more time. That was the last thing I sort of wanted to do because Sam was here and Sam provided information, and I didn't actually I didn't actually notepad these teams because they don't like these teams are obvious and correct, and I know what happened. Like I have eyeballs and I saw it, sort of thing. I notepadded these teams because they mattered. But let's pull back up. No, that's the wrong channel. Let's go to Okra for this and pull up Utah. Um. Okay. Oh, so there's a clarification from Twin Salty. Yeah, U2. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, PDK did play in the Kansas game, but Utah only got a 3-2 win over Kansas. I would love an explanation if you're still here now, Sam. What happened? Is that just like you guys had other roster issues because that's in the league where you guys have like 3 people who can't make classes? Is that what's going on? And I guess that's fine, but again, we sort of get a little bit back into my okay, but like these are predictions of how a team is going to do on any given day, and like if a league that makes up 30% of your matches or whatever, it has that thing happening, I don't know. But like I also sort of want it to be useful as a measuring stick for like, that's a league that you guys just expect to sweep, so you don't necessarily care if you take a bad loss and then win the league in the end sort of thing. And I get that, but it's a tough one to solve. Hey Fresco, how you doing? Let's. Oh, I was continuing through Utah there to give everyone a chance to get final questions in. Um, Yeah, so the Syracuse 3-1 win over Utah when PDK did not play. But again, like I sort of would have thought last year's Utah, even without PDK, because it looks like you guys have all the same players from last year besides, should have been able to beat Syracuse. So, yeah. Okay, fine. But hey, beat Fisher Navy, and Fisher Navy beat a Bryant Stratton that had to use their weaker tank player. Okay, I guess I've got to go with it. Um, Utah 2-1 against Converse. Why are you 2-1ing against Converse? Converse. They're probably in your Peck League, but ugh. No, this was homecoming. Why is Converse getting a map off you? I'm sorry, Converse isn't good this year. At all. At all. Oh well. Um and like Converse really isn't particularly good. They obviously have the loss to Utah, but they have a loss to ASU. That would be meaningless. But we can go loss to Bellevue. We don't care about. Loss to Utah. We were talking about. Loss to Cumberland. They've managed to find themselves some good losses, but they've got bad losses too. Let me scroll through to them. Oh, they may have a 2-1 win. Converse does against Sunny Binghamton. Okay. Okay. 3-0'd by Briarcliff, but again, that's not actually real value. They've lost their roster. We're gonna go back in time too much. 3-0'd by UTD. We can see it. It's not holding up. It's not holding up at all, sort of thing. Okay, so we're done here. Let's check for our final things here. Is any of you doing well? No, no. I mean, we're fine, but like this is a correct reflection, and this would not reflect the NEU is like a step off of last year, which is like 3 steps off of the 3 years prior. It's just life. So be it. What does Utah play? They play in OWC and they play in PEC, I think. Anyway, that's gonna do it. I am going to probably wrap this up here. Yeah, that'll do it. Cool. So we are done here. I am not seeing anything else that is worth covering, so I hope you guys have enjoyed. Like, subscribe in case ever I didn't ping this, in case maybe the Okra server will disappear at some point in the future and you'll need to figure out how to see my streams and you'll want to make sure you're subscribed. And you think I'm joking, but the predecessor to the Okra Discord is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. It was like tier 1.5 or whatever, and it was hilarious because we had sort of like the colorful with its pink, etc. diva icon, except they gave us, like Blizzard literally made for us, a freaking cow to go there. Cow for Collegiate Overwatch. It was freaking great. It was fantastic. And we had some Blizzard reps in there as well, which I don't think we have in the Okra one, or if we do, they're hiding quietly. But anyway, that's going to do it. I'll see you guys in the next one.